The moment began like any other high-profile event in Hollywood. A red carpet glittering under the lights, flashing cameras capturing every designer gown, every sharp tuxedo, every carefully rehearsed smile. But beneath the glitz and glamour of the 2025 A Year in Time event, there was a tension that you could feel, almost tangible, lingering in the air like static before a storm. People came expecting inspiration, maybe even a little magic. What they got instead was a collision of worlds. A Hollywood icon and a royal figure in a moment that no one would forget. And it started the second Leonardo DiCaprio set foot on that stage. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine for a second the audience, the elite of the entertainment industry, political figures, influencers, journalists, and, of course, the world watching live. All eyes were on DiCaprio and Prince Harry, seated just a few rows apart, the kind of proximity that makes headlines before a word is even spoken. You could sense the undercurrent of curiosity. Everyone knew both men had history. Harry with the shadow of royal expectation, DiCaprio with decades of Hollywood prestige and the kind of fame that allows you to command any room. But no one expected what was about to happen. No one. Let's rewind slightly to the build-up. Red carpets are rehearsed chaos. Reporters shouting, flashes going off like strobe lights in a nightclub, fans screaming for autographs. But back behind the scenes, away from the flashing lights and public spectacle, tension had been simmering for days, maybe weeks. Sources would later reveal that DiCaprio had been briefed about the royals attending, and a suggestion, maybe playful, maybe pointed, had been made: keep it sharp, keep it memorable. Harry, on the other hand, arrived prepared to project calm composure, the royal version of walking on stage with armor, polished, confident, carefully measured. But even the best armor sometimes cracks, especially when someone else writes the script. When the event began, there was applause, the kind that greets celebrities and royalty alike, a polite mixture of admiration and curiosity. And then the speeches started, the awards, the recognition of extraordinary achievements. The audience, sitting with glasses of champagne and programs in hand, followed the ceremony as if it were a well-oiled machine. And yet, the machine was about to grind to a halt. The cameras panned, capturing every reaction. Every twitch, every flicker of expression would be magnified, dissected, and immortalized online within minutes. And here's where it gets interesting. Before DiCaprio even uttered a single word about Prince Harry, there were glances. Micro-expressions that body language experts would later analyze frame by frame. Leonardo, always precise, carried that calm intensity. Eyes sharp, posture relaxed yet commanding, a subtle smirk that suggested he knew something the rest of the world didn't. Harry, for his part, smiled politely at introductions, nodding at colleagues and dignitaries. But behind the polite facade was a nervous energy that even a seasoned royal couldn't entirely mask. Some called it anticipation. Others called it dread. Whatever it was real, and it was palpable. Now, let's set the stage for what makes this story matter right now. This isn't just celebrity gossip. This isn't a fleeting headline destined to disappear in a few hours. It's a collision of public perception, personal branding, and the way narratives are constructed in the modern age. DiCaprio represents the pinnacle of Hollywood credibility, a man whose every word carries weight. Harry represents a global figure under constant scrutiny, whose every action is analyzed for hidden motives. When these two worlds collide in a live, public setting, the consequences ripple outward, not just for the individuals involved, but for public discourse itself. People will take sides, memes will go viral, and the lines between entertainment, politics, and royalty will blur even further. This is why you can't look away. You simply can't. And yet, despite all this, there was a moment of calm just before the storm, a brief, almost cinematic pause. The audience leaned forward, microphones were adjusted, and DiCaprio finally approached the stage. Cameras shifted, the sound system amplified every step he took. The world held its breath. And then he spoke. At first, innocuous words, discussing philanthropy, climate activism, the usual range of DiCaprio topics that inspire applause without controversy. But there was a hint. A subtle inflection, a pause loaded with meaning, that suggested a shift was coming. Anyone paying close attention could see it. Anyone looking for drama could smell it. The tension had been building for months, possibly years, and now it was about to snap. What happened next was unexpected, shocking, and unforgettable. DiCaprio turned his gaze toward Prince Harry. The room felt like it contracted, as if the universe itself had leaned in. And then the words. Short, cutting, and delivered with that trademark DiCaprio mix of calm and precision. Hit the room. Meghan Markle's puppet. Silence. A pause so long that it could have been measured in lifetimes. You could hear the collective intake of breath from journalists, celebrities, and viewers worldwide. Cameras caught Harry's expression, a mixture of forced composure, surprise, and a flicker of anger, an emotional cocktail that no PR strategy could ever fully prepare for. But the scene didn't end there. The audience reaction was instantaneous. Phones whipped out, social media lit up like wildfire, and within seconds, the first viral clips began circulating. Memes, GIFs, and hot takes flooded the internet. And yet, the full story, what led to those words, why they were chosen, and what happened immediately afterward, remained shrouded in mystery. This is where the curiosity gap opens. Everyone knew what was said, but no one knew why it had happened or what the true fallout would be. That's what makes this moment magnetic. That's what keeps people watching, analyzing, and discussing it weeks later. Think about it from Harry's perspective. Publicly humiliated, unexpectedly, in front of an elite audience and millions watching globally. The moment would be dissected endlessly. Every smile, every twitch, every attempt at composure would be analyzed. The world would wonder, was this playful teasing? A calculated strike? Or something more? And here's the twist. Even DiCaprio's own intentions remained partly speculative. His calm demeanor, his controlled delivery, the almost imperceptible smirk, was it scripted? Improvised? Or part of a larger strategy to expose the tension between Hollywood and royalty in a single line? These questions alone would fuel speculation for months. And let's not forget the emotional stakes. The crowd didn't just see a comment. They witnessed a microcosm of power, influence, and perception collide in real time. It was dramatic, ironic, and filled with contradictions. A Hollywood actor publicly shaming a royal trying to maintain composure, and the world watching every second. People love drama. They crave it. They dissect it, debate it, and share it. This is why the story is more than a moment. It's a phenomenon. So, as the introduction draws to a close, we are left with that irresistible pull. What happened next? How did Harry respond in private, off-camera, behind the velvet curtains of the event? What were the immediate whispers backstage, the texts, the phone calls, the shockwaves that rippled through social media and news outlets alike? And, most importantly, what did this mean for the relationship between public figures, the media, and the people who consume their stories? The night started like any other glamorous awards event, but with an undercurrent that no one outside the inner circle could feel. The 2025 A Year in Time event was already billed as one of the most anticipated evenings of the year. Invitations were scarce, tickets impossible to buy. Hollywood's elite, global dignitaries, social media influencers, and a handful of royals mingled in a space designed to impress, to command attention, and to remind the world who truly held power and influence. Prince Harry arrived shortly after sunset, stepping out of a sleek black car and onto a red carpet lined with flashing cameras and cheering fans. Every move, every step, every glance was measured. But beneath the polished exterior, the prince carried a tension that few could read. Years of public scrutiny, media speculation, and the pressure to maintain composure in a world that judged every smile or frown had shaped him into someone careful, almost guarded, in such high-profile situations. Still, there was an unmistakable energy about him, an eagerness, perhaps, to be seen not just as a royal, but as a man stepping out on his own terms. Meanwhile, Leonardo DiCaprio arrived with a different aura altogether. Whereas Harry's presence carried protocol, restraint, and subtle diplomacy, DiCaprio's presence demanded attention through sheer force of personality. Over decades, he had mastered the art of appearing effortless, commanding rooms without a word, influencing narratives without overt displays of power. To the casual observer, he might seem calm, almost detached, But beneath that composed exterior was a performer, a strategist, someone who understood timing, optics, and impact. The contrast between these two men, although subtle, was immediately evident to those watching. Harry, royal yet familiar, a man whose life had been both privileged and scrutinized, versus DiCaprio, Hollywood royalty, a man whose every move had become part of a cultural conversation for decades. The stage was set, not just physically, but metaphorically, for a collision that no one could have predicted. As the evening progressed, the air backstage was electric with anticipation. Event staff whispered about the dynamic between the two men. Photographers moved cautiously, trying to frame moments without drawing attention to any tension. The chatter of assistants, PR teams, and aides created a backdrop of urgency and speculation. "Do you think anything will happen?" someone asked. "He's got that look," another whispered, glancing at DiCaprio adjusting his cufflinks. "And Harry? He's not exactly relaxed either." Harry, seated among other dignitaries, attempted casual conversation. Smiles, nods, polite laughter punctuated the moments, but his eyes betrayed a watchful calculation. Every glance toward DiCaprio seemed to weigh meaning, potential, strategy. Meanwhile, DiCaprio rehearsed in his mind, not lines, but timing. The pauses, the inflections, the subtle ways to create impact without appearing unprofessional. Those in the know would later describe it as predatory precision, a readiness to seize the moment when it arrived. The audience, unaware of the backstage calculations, remained engrossed in the ceremony. Awards were presented, speeches given, applause punctuated with laughter and admiration. But even as the event flowed with what appeared to be seamless grandeur, there were micro-moments, small hints, subtle cues that something significant was about to occur. For instance, the camera panned occasionally toward DiCaprio, catching the briefest smirk as he observed Harry's polite but wary demeanor. To a casual viewer, it might have seemed incidental, but those with a keen eye noticed the tension, the unspoken challenge, the anticipation building like a silent storm. Moments like these are critical to understanding the drama that would soon unfold. Imagine the psychology at play. A man trained to perform under scrutiny, aware that every gesture could be dissected globally, facing another man equally accustomed to the stage, but in an entirely different realm of influence. One world is governed by protocol, tradition, and centuries of expectation. The other thrives on innovation, perception, and the instantaneous power of public attention. When these two forces intersect in a live, televised event, the potential for a high-stakes confrontation is almost inevitable. Adding to the tension was the cultural context. By 2025, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle had already been central figures in global media narratives for years. Every appearance, every comment, every action had been analyzed, often harshly, by the press and public alike. DiCaprio, on the other hand, carried a reputation for selectively speaking his mind in ways that could command headlines without appearing malicious. In a room filled with journalists, celebrities, and fans, one carefully chosen line could explode into a worldwide conversation. And everyone present sensed it, even if they didn't know exactly what form it would take. Backstage, a brief moment of calm allowed staff to whisper to each other about seating arrangements, speech notes, and program cues. But amidst this orchestrated chaos, DiCaprio and Harry were each plotting their own moves. Harry, mentally rehearsing responses, trying to project confidence without confrontation. DiCaprio, observing, gauging, and subtly testing the waters. There was a tension in the air that was almost tangible, the kind you can feel without touching. It wasn't just about personalities or ego. There were layers here that made the eventual onstage moment so magnetic. Power dynamics, public perception, and media narratives all collided. A single word, carefully chosen, could tilt public opinion, create viral content, and redefine reputations overnight. And that's precisely what would happen. But before the moment could arrive, the build-up itself played a critical role in setting the stage. The audience, the cameras, the whispers, and the unspoken glances, all of it contributed to the eventual shock, ensuring that when the words finally landed, the impact would be seismic. Harry, sitting in his seat, occasionally exchanged pleasantries with those nearby. To the untrained eye, he seemed calm, perhaps even relaxed. But anyone familiar with the pressures of public life could see the subtle tension. The slight tightening of his jaw, the way his hands rested lightly on his lap as if bracing for impact, the tiny flicker of his eyes whenever they briefly met DiCaprio's. Every motion, every expression, was a calculated performance. DiCaprio, by contrast, exuded a casual confidence that masked a razor-sharp awareness. His slight smirk, the tilt of his head, the measured pace of his movements, they were all part of a silent choreography. He didn't speak yet, but his presence alone seemed to shift the atmosphere. Those who had seen him in similar high-pressure environments knew that he could command attention with a single word or gesture. And tonight, every second of his presence was building toward a moment that no one could predict. Then came the cue. DiCaprio walked toward the stage with the poise of someone fully aware of the weight of the moment. The audience applauded politely, as they always do, but no one could anticipate the thunderbolt that was about to strike. And Harry, seated a few rows back, straightened instinctively, aware that the moment of reckoning was imminent, even if he didn't know exactly how it would unfold. The lights dimmed slightly, the microphones adjusted, and the cameras focused. DiCaprio's gaze shifted toward Harry, steady and deliberate. The world, both in the room and online, leaned in. The stage, the audience, and the media were all silent in anticipation, as if the universe itself paused for the coming collision. And then, the moment that would define the evening and spark a storm of global attention was seconds away. Backstage at the 2025 A Year in Time event, the atmosphere was a mixture of excitement, nervous energy, and barely contained anticipation. Unlike the polished elegance of the red carpet or the glittering stage, the behind-the-scenes world was chaotic, cluttered with cables, lighting equipment, and a swarm of people moving with purpose. Event coordinators hustled from one corner to the next, double-checking speeches, cue cards, and technical setups. Makeup artists hovered over celebrities, touching up last-minute imperfections, while assistants whispered reminders about schedules, talking points, and camera angles. It was a world hidden from the audience, yet crucial in shaping the public perception of the event. Amidst this orchestrated chaos, one tension was palpable above all others: the unspoken rivalry, or at least the brewing confrontation, between Leonardo DiCaprio and Prince Harry. Sources later described the backstage energy as electric, almost dangerous, as if the very walls could sense the brewing storm. Staff members, while trying to appear composed, exchanged nervous glances whenever the two men crossed paths. Even seasoned event coordinators, accustomed to high-profile personalities and fragile egos, admitted that something about the night felt different. From the start, DiCaprio's team had been unusually meticulous. Whispers of private briefings surfaced, where advisors had suggested specific lines, timing, and delivery methods to maximize impact. "Keep it sharp," one insider reportedly advised, hinting that DiCaprio had intentions beyond standard remarks. Whether playful, strategic, or deliberately provocative, the advice carried weight. DiCaprio, a master of public perception, understood that a single sentence, delivered at the right moment, could eclipse an entire evening of speeches, applause, and carefully orchestrated moments. Meanwhile, Harry's team was equally vigilant, though for different reasons. The prince had spent years navigating the treacherous waters of media scrutiny. Every appearance was a potential headline, every word a subject for analysis. The risk of misstep was high, and his aides had meticulously rehearsed postures, expressions, and possible responses. There was a collective understanding. If DiCaprio made any kind of remark, be it subtle or pointed, Harry would need to maintain composure under immense pressure. But even the most seasoned advisors recognized that some dynamics were impossible to predict, especially when they involved someone as enigmatic and unpredictable as DiCaprio. The backstage area was filled with whispers, speculation, and tension. Event staff reported overhearing comments like, "He's going to say something," and "Watch Harry's reaction." Makeup artists, usually focused solely on appearances, couldn't help but notice the subtle glances exchanged between the two men. One hairstylist later described a fleeting moment where DiCaprio and Harry made eye contact across the room. It was like a spark, just a fraction of a second, but you could feel the electricity. Neither man smiled. Neither looked away. Just this intensity. Text messages, leaked anonymously in the hours following the event, revealed further insight into the backstage dynamics. DiCaprio's assistants exchanged notes about timing and phrasing, while Harry's team discussed potential media fallout. Every detail mattered, from the cadence of his voice to the exact placement on the stage. Even small gestures, such as the way Harry adjusted his cufflinks or DiCaprio's deliberate pause before speaking, were scrutinized and rehearsed in mind, if not on paper. Amid the tension, there were also moments of absurdity, the kind that often characterizes high-profile events. A stylist accidentally spilled powder on the floor, drawing nervous laughter from a few nearby assistants. A reporter, unaware of the gravity of the backstage dynamics, asked a question about awards presentation logistics, and someone muttered, "We don't care about awards right now. Watch the two of them." These moments of levity were fleeting, quickly replaced by the anticipation that dominated the room. Harry, despite his experience in high-pressure situations, could not escape the subtle stress. His gaze frequently flicked toward the stage, tracking DiCaprio's movements. A forced smile appeared whenever someone attempted small talk, but it never reached his eyes. Even minor conversations felt secondary to the unspoken awareness that a confrontation, though undefined, was inevitable. He had been trained for royal ceremonies, scripted events, and predictable interactions. This was none of those. This was a live, unpredictable moment with a celebrity capable of rewriting the narrative in a single sentence. DiCaprio, by contrast, moved with the confidence of someone who had rehearsed unpredictability. His presence was commanding yet measured. A whisper here, a glance there, a subtle adjustment of his tie, all actions designed to project calm while maintaining a subtle edge. In hindsight, those who witnessed the interaction noted that he seemed almost theatrical, aware that the cameras might catch even the smallest gestures. Every move was designed to heighten the anticipation without giving away his final intent. The tension wasn't limited to the principals alone. Staff, aides, and assistants felt it, too. Event organizers later revealed that security was unusually alert, not because of any direct threat, but because the psychological intensity backstage was almost palpable. The atmosphere was taut, as if everyone was collectively holding their breath, waiting for a catalyst that could ignite the room. Even a minor comment, misinterpreted or exaggerated, could ripple outward into a media firestorm. And then there were the micro moments that would later be dissected by analysts and commentators. The subtle exchange of glances between DiCaprio and Harry. The slight stiffening of Harry's shoulders when DiCaprio approached the stage. The almost imperceptible smirk that played across DiCaprio's lips as he scanned the audience before speaking. Each of these details, invisible to the untrained eye, added layers of tension and foreshadowed the dramatic moment to come. Backstage, a small group of assistants and coordinators whispered about the possibilities. "Do you think he'll actually say it?" one asked. "I don't know," another replied. But even if he doesn't, the tension is already breaking the room. Nobody could predict the exact outcome, but everyone sensed that this wasn't going to be a typical awards night. The collision of two public figures with distinct spheres of influence created a volatile mixture, one that could, and would, explode once they were both on stage. And indeed, the first hint of the inevitable came when DiCaprio walked toward the podium. The quiet murmur backstage dropped, replaced by the low hum of expectation. Assistants stepped back, staff paused mid-task, and even Harry, seated nearby, straightened instinctively. There was no way to ignore the moment. The universe, it seemed, had tilted slightly in anticipation. Every camera, every microphone, every audience member became a potential participant in what was about to unfold. For Harry, every second was a mental calculation. Should he respond? Smile? Nod? Remain stoic? The options seemed endless, and yet, in that moment, any response carried weight, capable of altering public perception. For DiCaprio, the options were similarly high stakes. Speak with subtlety or strike with precision. Leave the moment ambiguous or crystallize it with a single line that would dominate headlines worldwide. The decisions were being made in real time, and every subtle gesture would be analyzed frame by frame, tweet by tweet, meme by meme. And then, just as the tension reached its apex, the moment that would define the evening, the moment that would reverberate across the world, was seconds away. The lights in the grand hall dimmed slightly as the evening progressed, creating the illusion of intimacy in a room filled with hundreds of high-profile figures. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors, bouncing fragments of light across the elegantly dressed crowd. To the casual observer, the night seemed perfect, rehearsed down to the last glittering detail. But for those attuned to human dynamics, there was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a silent tension vibrating through the room like a taut string ready to snap. The audience, unaware of the backstage maneuverings and microstrategies, was about to become a participant in a moment that would be dissected for years to come. Prince Harry sat poised in his seat, hands resting lightly on his lap, occasionally adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. His smile remained polite, but a trained eye would notice the tension in his jaw, the slight narrowing of his eyes whenever DiCaprio's presence drifted into his peripheral vision. He was surrounded by a cluster of celebrities and dignitaries, all chatting quietly, yet there was an undercurrent that nobody could ignore. Something was about to happen, and the collective subconscious of the room felt it. Meanwhile, Leonardo DiCaprio moved with a controlled grace, the kind of presence that fills space without demanding it outright. He had walked across the stage earlier to present an award, his steps deliberate, his gaze scanning the audience. Each movement was calculated, down to the tilt of his head and the pacing of his breath. Observers later noted the subtle difference in how he carried himself when his eyes fell on Harry versus when he scanned the crowd. There was focus, intent, a quiet storm before the thunder. Social media chatter had already begun. Attendees discreetly checked their phones, sending quick messages about the seating arrangements, the elegance of the decor, and the uncanny tension they could feel but couldn't fully articulate. Moments like this are the perfect fuel for speculation. Humans are hardwired to notice anomalies, and when something feels off, the mind fills in gaps with narratives. Memes, tweets, and early commentary began appearing within seconds as attendees and online viewers alike tried to predict what might unfold. Some joked about an awkward encounter, others predicted a brief quip, but no one imagined the explosive moment that was seconds away. In a space like this, anticipation is everything. Every glance, every gesture, every micro-expression becomes amplified, not just for the cameras, but for human perception. Harry's brief interactions with nearby guests were courteous, yet clipped, revealing the tension simmering beneath his calm exterior. He laughed politely at a joke, yet the laughter didn't reach his eyes. He shifted slightly in his chair, adjusting his posture, a subtle gesture meant to maintain composure, yet betraying the mental rehearsal he was performing. Observers would later describe him as on edge, yet contained, a man walking a tightrope between personal pride and public expectation. DiCaprio's presence had the opposite effect. While Harry's tension was defensive, DiCaprio's energy radiated controlled aggression. He could command attention with a subtle nod or the faintest smirk. Even those seated on the opposite side of the room felt the pull of his presence, a magnetic focus that made it impossible to ignore him. Analysts who reviewed footage frame by frame would later call it psychological mastery, the kind of performance that doesn't need words to leave an impact. And tonight, his words were about to match his presence. Every awards night follows a rhythm, a cadence designed to maintain audience engagement while highlighting key moments. Speeches are timed, presentations rehearsed, and applause cues predetermined. But what the organizers hadn't accounted for was the unpredictability introduced by two high-profile figures, each with the power to manipulate public perception. Harry, conditioned by years in the royal spotlight, expected decorum, predictability, and a sense of control. DiCaprio, however, thrived on subtle subversion, the ability to insert a narrative shift in a single breath, a single phrase. And as the evening's events unfolded, the collision of these two energies was inevitable. The audience, for their part, remained largely oblivious to the intricate psychological warfare at play. From the balcony, cameras captured polite applause, the shimmer of gowns, and the occasional flash of phone screens. Guests smiled, nodded, and whispered among themselves, unaware of the undercurrents rippling through the room. Yet for those who looked closely, small signs betrayed the growing tension: a shift in seating, a slight pause in conversation when DiCaprio's gaze drifted toward Harry, a collective leaning forward in anticipation. Even the production team could feel the tension. Stage managers, camera operators, and sound engineers sensed that a pivotal moment was approaching. Instructions were whispered, crew members adjusted microphones, and cameramen prepared for live reaction shots. Unlike typical award ceremonies where moments are rehearsed, this event had an unpredictability factor, an unknown variable in the form of a celebrity poised to speak in front of a global audience. Every technical adjustment, every camera angle, became part of a larger choreography that could not be fully rehearsed. And then there was the silence that comes just before something unforgettable occurs. It's a rare, almost imperceptible pause, yet its presence is undeniable. Conversations softened, laughter dimmed, and the collective attention of the room sharpened. It was in this suspended moment that anticipation peaks, and human psychology responds in fascinating ways. Hearts beat slightly faster, breathing becomes more noticeable, and the mind begins to speculate, imagine, and even exaggerate what is about to happen. Harry, seated amid this tense anticipation, remained outwardly composed, but his mind was active. He mentally reviewed potential responses, a polite nod, a controlled smile, even a strategic laugh. Each option carried risk and consequence. Public missteps, especially when captured on camera, can become viral phenomena in seconds, influencing public opinion and long-term reputation. Every gesture would be analyzed frame by frame, every expression scrutinized. And yet, as the seconds ticked by, he had no way of knowing what DiCaprio would do. DiCaprio, standing at the edge of the stage, had the opposite freedom. He could craft the moment with precision, choose the line, time the delivery, and observe the reaction in real time. It was the ultimate stage for psychological theater, a high-profile, live, global audience witnessing a subtle power play unfold. The tension between the two men, amplified by the collective attention of hundreds of guests and millions of viewers online, created a pressure cooker situation that could explode at any second. Social media anticipation was already building. Clips of previous interactions, whispers of backstage tension, and speculative posts began circulating. Viewers online were predicting jokes, awkward exchanges, or perhaps a harmless quip. What they couldn't predict was the precise moment when a single line would redefine the narrative, dominate headlines, and become a viral sensation. And then came the shift, a subtle change in DiCaprio's posture as he approached the podium. The audience's collective attention sharpened. Microphones captured the faintest rustle of fabric, the softest shuffle of steps. The cameras, trained on the stage, focused as if sensing that history was about to be made. Harry, recognizing the change, straightened in his seat. Every instinct, every training, every lesson from years of public exposure converged in anticipation of the imminent moment. It was in this pregnant pause, this moment of collective breath-holding, that the world seemed to lean in. The stage, the audience, and the media all converged on the same focal point: Leonardo DiCaprio and the words he was about to speak. Every frame captured the tension, every angle amplified the anticipation, and every heartbeat in the room echoed with expectation. And then, the first word was spoken, quiet, deliberate, almost innocuous, but carrying within it the weight of what was to come. The room seemed to contract in that instant. Every eye, every camera lens, every smartphone pointed toward the stage as Leonardo DiCaprio leaned slightly forward, the microphone poised, and the world held its collective breath. What came next was a moment that would redefine the evening, dominate headlines, and send shockwaves through social media, tabloids, and public discourse alike. A single phrase, delivered with surgical precision, transformed what had been a glamorous awards event into a moment of cultural infamy. DiCaprio's gaze, steady and unwavering, locked on Prince Harry. There was no hesitation, no waver, no trace of ambiguity. This was not playful teasing. This was intentional. The words left his mouth like a perfectly aimed arrow. Meghan Markle's puppet. The reaction was instantaneous. Gasps rippled through the audience like a shockwave. Some guests clutched their champagne flutes instinctively. A few chairs shifted under startled weight, and a subtle murmur of disbelief spread like wildfire. Cameras, trained for years to capture moments of subtle celebrity expression, froze. In slow-motion clarity, Harry's eyes widened ever so slightly. His jaw tightened, his hands clenched momentarily in his lap, and a flicker of emotion, anger, embarrassment, incredulity, passed across his features. For the audience, the impact was as dramatic as it was unprecedented. The contrast was stark. DiCaprio, calm and collected, delivered the blow with the controlled poise of someone fully aware of its effect. Harry, the royal accustomed to decorum and control, was caught in the raw immediacy of public scrutiny. Even the most seasoned commentators watching from the wings recognized the psychological weight of the moment. In real time, the world was witnessing an elite figure humiliate a royal in front of a live, global audience. Social media erupted instantly. Clips of the moment circulated within seconds, captions ranging from humorous to outraged, opinions divided sharply across the spectrum. Some viewed DiCaprio's words as clever satire, a critique of the perceived influence in Harry's life. Others saw it as cruel, unnecessary, and calculated humiliation. Analysts dissected every angle: the smirk that accompanied the line, the exact timing, and the interplay of body language between the two men. Within minutes, hashtags were trending, tweets multiplying at exponential rates, and the phrase itself, Meghan Markle's puppet, became a viral sensation. Harry, maintaining outward composure, forced a polite smile. His lips pressed together in a way that betrayed the effort to remain calm. His hands, still resting on his lap, subtly shifted as if to regain control of the moment. But the damage, if it can be called that, was already done. The room, the cameras, the world had all seen the micro-moment that would define the night. It was the perfect collision of celebrity culture and royalty, played out with a precision that few could have anticipated. Behind the scenes, whispers and exclamations erupted among staff and assistants. One aide, later quoted anonymously, described the moment as a kind of collective intake of breath, where even seasoned PR teams felt the impact. We were watching history unfold live, and there was nothing we could do to control it. The energy backstage mirrored that of the audience, tense, astonished, and brimming with anticipation for what would follow. The brilliance, or ruthlessness, of DiCaprio's delivery lay in its simplicity. No elaborate setup, no drawn-out insult, no dramatic preamble. Just 3 words, delivered with calm authority, cutting cleanly through the atmosphere of the event. There was an artistry to the humiliation, a psychological precision that made it both shocking and, in a strange way, mesmerizing. Observers noted that it was the kind of moment that would be replayed endlessly, dissected for nuance, and debated for interpretation. Harry's reaction, although constrained in public, was equally complex. In the immediate aftermath, he managed to nod slightly, a gesture intended to maintain politeness and composure. Yet those familiar with body language could detect the tension coiled in his posture, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the flicker of a defensive instinct. It was a masterclass in public restraint, a man under intense scrutiny, forced to navigate a situation for which no rehearsal could have prepared him. Meanwhile, DiCaprio's expression remained composed, almost neutral, but with the faintest trace of satisfaction, a barely perceptible smirk that indicated he knew the impact of his words. He continued with the rest of his presentation, but the room, for a moment, remained fixed on the psychological drama that had just unfolded. Cameras lingered, capturing every detail, the reactions of the audience, the subtle shifts in Harry's body language, and the juxtaposition between celebrity and royalty in an intimate, yet public spectacle. Immediately after the words were spoken, the audience's emotional response became a narrative in itself. Laughter, nervous or amused, punctuated the silence in some corners. Shock, disbelief, and curiosity mingled in others. Some whispered, speculating whether this was planned, scripted, or spontaneous. And across social media, the clips and screenshots spread like wildfire, fueling debate, memes, and viral content. Every frame told a story, and every story invited analysis, commentary, and speculation. The psychological impact extended beyond the event itself. For Harry, the public nature of the humiliation carried immediate stakes. Every movement, every attempt at composure would be analyzed in the press, across television networks, and online forums. For DiCaprio, the moment reinforced his reputation as a figure capable of controlling public perception, commanding attention, and making statements that resonate far beyond the immediate context. Analysts and commentators would later break down the scene meticulously. The timing of the words, delivered after a subtle pause and a deliberate glance toward Harry, demonstrated an understanding of human psychology. By drawing attention to the royal while maintaining a veneer of calm, DiCaprio ensured maximum impact. In essence, he had converted a casual award presentation into a staged moment of psychological theater. Even the audience's applause, when it came, was colored by context. It wasn't simple appreciation for the award or the speech. It was recognition of the tension, the drama, and the spectacle that had unfolded in real time. Observers later noted the ironic blend of shock and admiration, a mixture of awe and discomfort that encapsulated the unique collision of celebrity culture and royal expectation. Harry, however, was not entirely passive. Although outwardly restrained, subtle indicators suggested internal recalibration. Slight shifts in posture, micro-adjustments in expression, and the careful control of hand movements all hinted at an effort to regain composure and assert presence without escalating the situation publicly. It was an intricate dance, invisible to the untrained eye, yet rich with meaning for those attuned to subtle social cues. The moment also raised questions that would dominate headlines for weeks. Was this playful teasing or a deliberate humiliation? Had DiCaprio planned the line, or was it improvised in response to perceived tension? What did this reveal about power dynamics between Hollywood and royalty, and why had Harry, despite experience, been caught so visibly off guard? These questions kept the audience engaged, the social media discourse alive, and the story itself viral. Harry's initial reaction was instinctual. His eyes widened, a flicker of incredulity flashing across his face. His jaw tightened subtly, and his hands, resting lightly on his lap moments before, shifted almost imperceptibly. He attempted a smile, one he hoped would convey control, humor, or grace. But to any trained observer, it was clear that the smile was a mask, a thin veneer over a more complex emotional cocktail. Shock, anger, disbelief, and self-restraint mingled in a moment so subtle that most viewers would miss it entirely. But for those paying attention, it was unforgettable. Maintaining composure under such pressure is an art few master. Harry had rehearsed responses to public questioning countless times, studied body language, and had decades of exposure to the unrelenting scrutiny of royal life. Yet, in that instant, all of that training was put to the test. Every micro-expression, every subtle gesture, every controlled breath became a tool in a silent, high-stakes negotiation with the public eye. He was performing, yes, but the stakes were unlike anything in a rehearsed setting. This was psychological warfare at its most refined, and he was in the crosshairs. Immediately, Harry's aides and team sprang into action. Though most were out of camera range, they could feel the seismic shift in energy. Whispers filled the backstage corridors, assistants exchanged urgent glances, and messages were discreetly sent to PR teams on high alert. One insider would later describe the scene as controlled panic, a flurry of preparation for damage control in real time. But nothing could erase what the cameras had captured: a royal, publicly humiliated, caught in a live psychological strike from one of Hollywood's most influential figures. In the seconds following the comment, Harry's mental calculation began. Should he respond, smile and play along, nod politely and move on, or remain stoic, letting DiCaprio's words hang unchallenged? Each option carried risk. A visible reaction could be spun as indignation, weakness, or humor. No reaction might be interpreted as submissiveness or humiliation. In that high-pressure environment, every choice was magnified exponentially. Harry's inner dialogue, invisible to the audience, was a frantic yet precise navigation of potential outcomes. Meanwhile, his body language was a masterclass in restraint. Harry shifted slightly, drawing a measured breath. His shoulders, though tense, relaxed just enough to avoid signaling overt aggression. His hands, which had momentarily tightened, were subtly repositioned to project calm while concealing emotional turmoil. Even a fleeting glance toward the audience conveyed a controlled narrative. He was aware, composed, and in command, even if internally his mind was racing. Social media, as expected, had already begun exploding. Within moments, clips of the phrase went viral, hashtags emerged, and commentators dissected every frame. Observers noted the intricacies of Harry's reactions, the brief twitch of his mouth, the micro-adjustment of his posture, the subtle change in eye focus. Each detail fed into a narrative of resilience, grace under pressure, and complex emotional intelligence. Publicly, he remained polite. Privately, he navigated the storm of perception and judgment with precision. Even the audience's reaction played into the unfolding drama. Gasps, whispered reactions, and nervous laughter punctuated the silence, a live soundtrack to Harry's internal calculation. The moment had become a crucible, testing his ability to maintain composure, project confidence, and navigate the intricate web of celebrity, media, and public scrutiny. Every eye in the room, every camera lens, every observer, both in person and online, was now a participant in this psychological interplay. Behind the scenes, insiders reported a flurry of communication. Aides discreetly checked Harry's schedule for post-event appearances, drafted potential statements, and coordinated with legal and PR teams to manage fallout. Text messages were exchanged, emails flagged, and calls quietly routed through secure lines. Despite all these measures, nothing could mitigate the impact of the moment itself. In public perception, the words had landed, and their echo would reverberate long after the applause died down. Harry's mind, however, wasn't entirely consumed by damage control. There was also a personal reckoning. The words, humiliating, pointed, and public, forced him to confront a difficult internal question. How much of his public narrative is controlled by external forces? How much is perception shaped by others' agendas? And, most pressingly, how should one respond when confronted with unexpected humiliation in a global arena? The tension between maintaining dignity and asserting self-respect played out silently, visible only through subtle expressions and micro-movements that spoke volumes. And yet, Harry's response wasn't simply defensive. There was strategy embedded in every glance, every controlled smile. By projecting calm composure, he subtly reclaimed authority over his image. He transformed the moment into a study in restraint, turning what could have been public embarrassment into a demonstration of self-control under extreme scrutiny. Observers later described it as a quiet reclamation of dignity, executed with subtlety and precision, a performance designed to endure scrutiny while mitigating the impact of DiCaprio's verbal strike. As minutes passed, the room returned to the rhythm of the event, yet the energy remained charged. The audience, even as they applauded the next speaker, couldn't completely disengage from what had just unfolded. Social media continued to amplify the moment. Memes proliferated, opinion pieces exploded, and news outlets ran analysis segments almost immediately. Every word Harry had not spoken became fodder for speculation, every gesture meticulously examined. In effect, the event had become a live case study in celebrity psychology, media manipulation, and public perception. Yet even as the public narrative grew, Harry's internal experience remained complex. He had faced scrutiny before, endured public criticism, and navigated complex family dynamics under the global spotlight. But this moment was distinct. It combined personal humiliation, public exposure, and the heightened stakes of live audience perception. Every instinct, every decision, every subtle micro-adjustment was part of a mental chess game played under extreme pressure. As the evening continued, Harry's measured response became part of the story itself. Analysts praised his composure, while critics speculated on his private reaction. Social media was split between admiration and mockery, highlighting the intense polarization surrounding public figures in the modern media landscape. Yet for Harry, the work wasn't finished. The real challenge lay not just in surviving the moment, but in navigating its aftermath. The whispers, the headlines, the global commentary, and the personal ramifications. And through it all, the underlying question persisted. How would he respond off camera, in private, when the weight of the public gaze lifted, if only slightly? That answer remained unseen, yet was central to the unfolding narrative. Within seconds of Leonardo DiCaprio's words hitting the stage, Meghan Markle's puppet, the world outside the Grand Hall ignited. Social media, that relentless amplifier of drama, sprang to life in ways that no press release or orchestrated campaign could replicate. Clips, GIFs, and screenshots spread at lightning speed, their reach extending far beyond the attendees at the 2025 A Year in Time event. In an era where a single phrase can become a global phenomenon in minutes, this moment was a textbook example of virality, fueled by shock, curiosity, and the irresistible urge to witness public humiliation. On Twitter, the first clips appeared almost immediately. The hashtag DiCaprio versus Harry began trending within minutes. Fans, critics, and journalists alike dissected the footage, frame by frame, analyzing every twitch, every expression, every micro-reaction from both men. Was Harry's slight jaw-tightening an indication of anger or embarrassment? Did DiCaprio's subtle smirk signal playful teasing or calculated humiliation? Every nuance became fodder for debate. Within an hour, tens of thousands of posts flooded the platform, turning the phrase into a cultural lightning rod. Instagram and TikTok followed suit. Short clips, expertly edited for dramatic effect, appeared with captions designed to maximize engagement. One video, slowed down to highlight Harry's reaction, garnered millions of views within the first day. Another, focusing on DiCaprio's controlled delivery, was shared across multiple fan accounts, accompanied by commentary dissecting his psychological precision. Memes proliferated, some humorous, some mocking, some praising the audacity of the moment. The online ecosystem was in overdrive, creating a self-sustaining loop of virality that fueled global attention. News outlets quickly picked up the story. Headlines ranged from the sensational to the analytical. DiCaprio publicly humiliates Prince Harry at time event, screamed one tabloid. Another, more measured, offered the tension between Hollywood and royalty, analyzing the DiCaprio-Harry moment. The variety of coverage reflected the polarization of public opinion. Some viewed the comment as clever social commentary, others as unnecessarily cruel, and still others as a reflection of the complicated power dynamics between celebrities and royals in the digital age. What made the social media explosion so fascinating was the speed and precision with which narratives formed. Within minutes, threads dissected Harry's posture, facial expressions, and hand movements. Users speculated about his emotional state, potential responses, and private thoughts. DiCaprio's intent became a hot topic of debate. Was it playful teasing, a strategic strike, or a combination of both? The public, hungry for drama and nuance, quickly filled in the blanks, constructing narratives that extended far beyond what could be observed in the short video clips. The virality was amplified by the audience's ability to participate in the narrative. Viewers could react, comment, and share their interpretations instantly. Polls were created. Who handled the moment better? Was DiCaprio in the right or wrong? Hashtags multiplied, including hashtag Hollywood versus royalty, hashtag puppet controversy, and hashtag DiCaprio strikes. Social media wasn't just reporting the moment, it was co-creating it, amplifying its emotional resonance, and shaping the way it would be remembered. Memes, in particular, played a critical role. Humor, exaggeration, and irony allowed the public to process a potentially tense or uncomfortable moment through the lens of entertainment. A popular meme juxtaposed DiCaprio's smirk with Harry's widened eyes, captioned simply, "When Hollywood writes the script." Another meme referenced Shakespearean drama. All the world's a stage, and Harry just got a new line. Through memes, the moment transcended the immediate event, embedding itself into popular culture in a way that no formal media report could achieve. The speed of dissemination also highlighted the global nature of modern media. By the time the next award presentation began, millions of people worldwide had already seen the clip. Time zones didn't matter. The viral loop had already gone international. Reactions poured in from fans in Europe, North America, Asia, and Australia. Commentators speculated on cultural differences in perception, noting that humor, embarrassment, and authority are interpreted differently across regions. Despite these differences, the core story, public humiliation of a royal by a Hollywood icon, resonated universally. What social media amplified beyond anything the live event could produce was the power of speculation. Without access to private conversations, backstage moments, or Harry's internal response, the public filled in gaps. Narratives emerged about potential tension between DiCaprio and Harry, the influence of Meghan Markle, and the broader implications for Hollywood and royal relations. Even official statements were delayed, leaving room for conjecture and debate. The vacuum created by absence of commentary became a fertile ground for rumor, interpretation, and virality. The phenomenon also demonstrated the double-edged nature of global attention. For Harry, the virality magnified the moment of humiliation, turning a private, fleeting emotional reaction into a worldwide spectacle. For DiCaprio, the viral attention reinforced his reputation as a public figure capable of commanding both attention and narrative influence. Both men became symbols, one of restraint under pressure, the other of deliberate public impact. Their interplay became a case study in media dynamics, influence, and the psychology of public perception. Moreover, the social media explosion created ripple effects beyond the immediate event. Online commentary led to interviews, podcast analyses, and late-night talk show segments. Influencers and commentators offered breakdowns, reactions, and reinterpretations of the moment. Each iteration added layers to the narrative, transforming a 3-second comment into an evolving story with cultural, social, and emotional significance. In essence, the world became an extension of the audience, amplifying, reacting, and shaping the meaning of the encounter in real time. Even within official circles, the impact was palpable. PR teams, advisors, and communications specialists scrambled to assess the fallout. Crisis management strategies were debated, potential responses drafted, and timing for statements carefully calculated. No one could ignore the power of social media to influence perception, and everyone recognized that in the digital age, a single moment, captured and shared, can eclipse hours of careful planning, rehearsed appearances, and curated messaging. For the public, the fascination was irresistible. The combination of celebrity, royalty, and live, unfiltered drama created a story that was at once personal, public, and performative. The moment invited everyone to speculate, interpret, and take sides. Fans of DiCaprio praised his wit and precision. Admirers of Harry analyzed his poise and resilience. Critics debated the ethical and psychological dimensions. And across platforms, the conversation raged, feeding itself in an endless cycle of engagement, speculation, and amplification. But as the social media frenzy reached its peak, one question remained unanswered. How would Prince Harry respond privately, away from cameras and the public gaze? What conversations were happening behind closed doors? What emotions were being processed? And what strategy would guide the next steps? The online narrative had already taken on a life of its own, but the real story, the unseen fallout, the personal reckoning, the decisions made in private, was still unfolding. And that, as always, was where the tension would escalate. As the social media storm reached its peak, traditional media quickly mobilized to cover the unfolding drama. Headlines splashed across websites, TV screens, and news apps within minutes. DiCaprio humiliates Prince Harry on global stage. Meghan Markle's puppet? Leonardo DiCaprio sparks royal controversy. And Hollywood versus royalty. The viral moment everyone's talking about. Newsrooms around the world scrambled to verify footage, gather eyewitness accounts, and provide context, feeding a media machine that thrives on immediacy and sensationalism. News cycles moved faster than ever in 2025, and this particular moment had all the elements for virality: celebrity power, royalty, public humiliation, and live spectacle. Television anchors replayed the clip repeatedly, dissecting each frame for nuance. Commentary panels debated the meaning of Harry's reaction and DiCaprio's delivery, speculating on intent, professionalism, and psychological impact. Print and online outlets published analyses and op-eds, providing both measured interpretation and sensationalized angles to draw readers. The media frenzy was global, with cultural interpretations varying but the core narrative, DiCaprio publicly embarrassing a prince, remaining consistent. News anchors, commentators, and journalists framed the story in ways that reflected existing biases and interests. Some outlets treated it as lighthearted, focusing on the humor of the situation and emphasizing DiCaprio's wit. Others portrayed it as a calculated humiliation, a sharp critique aimed at Harry's public persona and personal life. Analysis pieces delved into historical context, comparing this moment to previous instances where public figures faced unexpected challenges in live settings. Across media types, the story quickly evolved from a simple clip to a multi-layered narrative about celebrity power, royal scrutiny, and global attention. Even in outlets known for objectivity, the coverage carried subtle undertones of judgment and speculation. The prince's measured reaction is a study in restraint, one analyst noted. But the optics are challenging. Few can withstand a live, verbal jab on an international stage without any sign of internal turmoil. Another report questioned the ethics of DiCaprio's comment, asking whether public figures should be held accountable for moments that deliberately humiliate others in a highly visible context. The media frenzy, in essence, created multiple parallel narratives, each reinforcing the viral nature of the incident. The frenzy extended beyond reporting into interactive journalism. News apps allowed users to vote on their interpretations of the moment, polls asking, who handled the situation better? Or was DiCaprio right to say that? Interactive comment sections, often teeming with speculation, humor, and outrage, provided a participatory experience, amplifying the sense that the world was collectively witnessing and interpreting a live spectacle. This created a feedback loop. Media coverage fueled social media discussions, which in turn influenced more coverage, creating an endless cycle of attention, analysis, and commentary. International media contributed an additional layer of complexity. European outlets emphasized the contrast between Hollywood culture and royal tradition, highlighting the clash of worlds. In North America, coverage often leaned into celebrity-focused narratives, treating the moment as entertainment yet acknowledging its viral significance. Asian and Australian outlets approached the story with curiosity, framing it as a cultural phenomenon while contextualizing the personalities involved. Despite regional differences, the story maintained global resonance, proving that moments of live spectacle have cross-cultural appeal. In the hours and days following the event, the story evolved rapidly. Initial reports were followed by in-depth features analyzing Harry's history and media narratives, Meghan Markle's influence on public perception, and DiCaprio's reputation for subtle strategic influence in public settings. Analysts pointed to the psychological elements at play, noting that DiCaprio had created a moment that combined humor, critique, and public spectacle with minimal effort, while Harry's controlled response demonstrated emotional intelligence and experience navigating scrutiny. Media frenzy also produced secondary narratives, each adding layers to the original story. Discussions about celebrity hierarchy, royal expectations, and public perception proliferated. Pundits debated whether the incident signaled a shift in the balance of influence between Hollywood and royal institutions, while opinion pieces speculated on long-term consequences for both men's reputations.